Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today I get to show you guys an absolute amazing LEGO custom creation. This is the LAAT Dropship, standing for Low Altitude Assault Transport, and this is essentially the big old ship that would carry those giant ATTEs into battle during the Clone Wars. This full minifig scale ship was built by David Buckles, and if you wanted to build this giant beast of a model, you can find the instructions at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Included with each purchase is a PDF step-by-step building guide as well as a parts list, so you can order the parts that you would need online. And getting instructions from us is a great way to help support what we do here on the channel, and it's also a great way to help support the designers that we work with, like David. He's got a variety of different Clone Wars builds already up in the store, including the ATTE, which scales perfectly with this model and can be attached to the underbelly. I'll get more into how that works later in the video. It's really fun and surprisingly simple function, but for now let's focus on the ship itself. So its measurements come out to 22 inches long or 56 centimeters, 29.5 inches wide, 75 centimeters, and 10.5 inches high or 27 centimeters. That makes it one of the larger minifig scale Star Wars ships out there that we have currently built, and we have so many different ones in the studio right now that I'm only showing them off next to the relevant Clone Wars ones, and for the most part it pretty much dwarfs everything else, even giving the ARC 170 a run for its money. I suppose though that now that we've got it in front of the ATTE, it is now time to get into the functions of the model. What can you actually physically do with it? And of course I think you guys want to see how this attaches and detaches from the large walker. In order to get this to actually sit on top of the walker without crushing it, because this is such a huge heavy model, there are two Technic sub-assemblies that you can put underneath, one underneath the ATTE and one underneath the nose of the dropship here, and that keeps the models very stable and completely gets rid of the chance of having the big legs of the ATTE collapsing underneath the sheer weight of the dropship. You'll see this other little Technic cross piece. Technically it can be any type of piece that could fit into the hole here. All that's really required is that you can lift up this little piece that's been built into the top of the ATTE and have it wedged into the hole to keep it up and not falling back down. And then the second part of this requires the larger black Technic sub-assembly, where you can just lift up the ATTE and the piece kind of fits into two little slots there. It doesn't stud in, but it stays there firmly, and now all the weight of the model can rest on that little Technic structure. Now that the model can take the weight of the entire dropship resting on top of it, it is time to attach. First you're going to need to move the gun pointing backwards. David recommends that you actually take off the cannon during this process because you can bump it. Personally, this didn't happen to me. This is actually my first attempt at putting on the ATTE. Ramon is who built this model and did a lot of the testing here in the studio, and he kind of hyped me up saying that, oh, you know, you got to make sure it's a heavy model and you know, you got to make sure that it does it right. But this was actually pretty much a cinch. The internal structure that attaches between the dropship and the ATTE is a sort of a spring-loaded trigger, and once you rest it on top, it sort of locks around that little bit that sticks out from the top of the ATTE, and it's already attached. You didn't see me put any pins together. Well, speaking of spring-loaded, you can actually knock that little detailing open, but here I am picking up the model. Didn't attach anything on the inside, didn't have to move any pins. It really just locked into place and attached itself to the ATTE automatically. So the body and structure is really strong. I was a little bit dumb here because I picked up the model not from the bottom, because that little black Technic piece that holds really all the weight is no longer attached to the model, so I had to rest it on top, and fortunately enough it can slide back into the belly of the model pretty easily, and I didn't have any mishaps. This is the first attempt. I do like to show you guys just how these models work. They're definitely not play sets where little kids can pick up and mess around with them easily, at least the big heavy ones like these. but as long as you know how to work these models, it shouldn't be annoying or difficult to get the functions to do what you want them to do. Remember, that was my first attempt. I didn't even build this thing, and since then I've attached and reattached this model 2 other times. From here, the best way to move the model around on the ground is by picking up the build from the bottom. This way the Technic structures stay in completely, so you don't have to get them to line up every time you move the thing around, and it's actually not very difficult to slide the model on a flat surface once you've got this whole thing set up. I think these things look really, really cool with the actual dropship in mid-dropping, I suppose. That's what you would call it when it's dropping off the giant walker. And just so you guys can see, this is what the connection looks like on the underbelly when both of the ATTE and the walker are attached together. Now, this is a video shot of me attempting to take the model off for the very first time. It's really easy. You just kind of pull the trigger back. It's held on by a rubber band, which gives it that little tension, and that's it. That's it. You just take the model off, and the function works pretty much as smooth as butter. I haven't yet broken it, so I can't tell you if a repair like that would be difficult. At the end of the day, the internal model of this is very Technic heavy, especially right there towards the back where the function works. And while we're here, I might as well get into the functions a little bit later, but I have been handling the model a lot, so you can open it up. You can pick it up by this back thing that folds up, and you can also just hold it by the underbelly, not by the very back. And if you could guess, yeah, you probably don't want to pick this thing up by the wings, though they're actually attached pretty strong. None of the greebling really breaks away except for that those 2 little arcing pieces that you saw earlier, and the model itself can slide around easily along the ground. And I have not yet found an area of this build with pieces that are particularly weak. Now let me show you some of the functions a little bit more. This is the top that opens up. Normally this doesn't fold up on the model like in universe, but David has created a very strong Technic handle that can fold up and open, so you can pick the model up from the top very, very easily. As you can imagine, because it's a handle, it's built really, really strong. And when picking up just the dropship by itself, this is by far the best way to go. I usually like to put my hand underneath the nose as well, just for stabilization, because that's not necessarily the midpoint for its weight. Now, the second function is exactly what you might expect it to be. You can fit a pilot minifigure in the front. He doesn't have to stud in. It's actually a pretty snug little fit, and the windscreen covers him over the top. There's a little bit of detailing on the inside. The seat actually reflects pretty closely what the seats looked like from David's gunship model, because the seats would actually pretty much be the same between these 2 ships in universe. And then as for the rest of the functions on this ship, of course, you've got the 2 guns in the front that are posable. They've actually got quite a bit of posability built in there, and the same goes for the rear gun in the back. This one's just on a little mixel joint, and I don't know if this counts as a function, but I really appreciated this part of the model when I was playing around with it. These cups, or these suction cups, that I think are what really is supposed to be holding on, magnetizing the giant walker to the model in universe. They work as sort of landing gear, and David has just a little bit of give built into them, so they can kind of squish open slightly when you place the model down. This makes it also able to wrap around the model of the ATTE a little bit more easily and softly when it's actually attached. Now let me wrap up by just pointing out some of my favorite build design details, the actual greebling and cool little bits and pieces on the model. I like this olive green barrel that's tucked in there, this wonderful sidewall detailing. Behind the engine intakes, I'm going to assume, we have these wonderful little round disc pieces, and another pair in the front. And then you can see a little bit more of the mechanical side detailing that runs along the edge. This part is maybe the weakest. You did see that one little piece fly off and shoot the pin in the air. That's probably the only part of the model that I've really noticed as being slightly weak, and after that it really all is pretty rock solid. I love the build for the nose. As you pan down, you can see those giant cavities that hold the 2 turrets in the front, and this is really where I think the model excels in terms of being super easy to identify, and David really managed to get a lot of wonderful curves to all match up pretty smoothly and very seamlessly. This is just another couple of looks at the bottom piece. This is the subassembly that snaps around and attaches to the ATTE itself. You can see the little rubber band in there. And now I suppose it's time for final thoughts. This is a really big, relatively heavy model. I do suggest that you pick this thing up with 2 hands at all times, just because the center weight point in the back isn't really center weight. But for something so detailed and so massive it's a surprisingly easy model to handle. David does an excellent job of making his models both detailed and structurally sound. He has bitten off some very difficult and complicated designs, with the dropship I would say probably being one of the most difficult ones to attempt. I can't find an area where he has sacrificed any detailing in order to have some structural stability, yet the model itself is built like a rock, despite the fact that it has such a giant gap kind of cut out from the inside compared to how the gunship is set up. Everybody here in the studio was very impressed when we found out that it could attach itself to the ATTE without needing an extra hand to do so, and that David had actually planned this out a very long time ago, because the ATTE is an older model, yet he still had this function and the structural integrity of the model set up in a way where it would always be able to integrate with the dropship the way you see it now. So anyways, we're really happy with the way this turned out. We've got ideas and images of dioramas, Clone Wars dioramas kind of running through our heads. And if you've stuck around in this video this long, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Remember, if you enjoy what we do, you can always like or subscribe. Please check out the web store, www.brickvault.toys, if you're interested in building this model or any others. And if you've got any ideas about other types of ships or models or buildings or anything that you'd like to see us make in a custom video for the future, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.